I'm Cameron. I'm developing stillOS from my new company, stillHQ. And so I previously created RizzyOS. I'm gonna get more on that later because RizzyOS is part of the story on how this came to be. But that was a Fedora-based OS that was trying to make Fedora a lot easier by making it easier to get up and go and set up like proprietary drivers and things. I also work for TechHut Media, so I'm a video producer for them. I edit videos, I write videos for them, and I've also used to be the guy for Pine64. If you've ever seen one of their monthly YouTube update videos, that was me voicing it. I'm a first-year computer science and entrepreneurship student at Wazoo, and I'm also a former member of both Hack Club and DECA. And so as I said earlier previously, I founded RizzyOS. The whole goal there was just trying to make Fedora more beginner friendly because I kind of think Fedora's the best base for a distro, but the problem is you can't recommend it in the same way you recommend like in Ubuntu because you have to go in and set up RPM Fusion and everything, and it's not just as easy to just install and run as every other Linux distro is. And I thought that that was the reason why Fedora wasn't the #1 distro and it was still Ubuntu after all these years. And so I came up with RizzyOS. We had this feature called Quick Setup where as soon as you would boot, it would give you every single application you might need, and you could click on a checkbox as well as all of the different drivers you could need and different tweaks to the DNF config. And with that, you could get your whole Fedora system running really smoothly and quickly. We also had a custom tweak tool. We had our own technology called RTheme that could actually theme Livid Weta. And we had a tweak tool to complement that. Although it was kind of just a rewrite of known tweaks with Livid Weta and then a few extra distro-specific features. And then we also had heavy web app integration. So I was actually a contributor to ICE from Peppermint OS, which is Peppermint OS was the first distro to have web app management. And they used ICE for it, where it would basically hack the browser to make a site-specific browser. And then that actually would later be forked by Linux Mint, and they would basically completely overhaul the interface for ICE. And I ended up forking the Linux Mint one, which is funny because I did an ICE rewrite right before Mint forked it, so it was kind of a fork of my own code base. But I ended up forking their web app manager and adding a store to their web app manager where you had a bunch of preset web apps you could just click and get running. And so that was how RizzyOS handled web app management, but there are actually some problems with that approach that I'm going to talk about later. And then while I was building RizzyOS, there was this huge trend in immutable Linux distributions. So for those who don't know what that is, those are distributions where your file system is read-only and the updates are handled atomically. So the whole idea is that every single installation of whatever distribution it is identical to each other from the root file system level. Obviously your home folders and are going to be different, but just while I was working on RizzyOS, you had Vanilla OS come out, which came out with the AB root system, and they had a ton of innovative features by integrating DistroBox and getting other like package managers working on it and everything. And then you had Fedora Silverblue coming out, which is where I got my start playing around with this, and that is Fedora with OS tree, where it uses all the RPM packages to generate an image, and then you could overlay other packages on top of it. And we also have NixOS, where that's kind of the arch of immutable distros, where you have your whole config file, where you can build everything yourself and have it exactly how you want. And then with that config file, it'll push out and basically build a read-only image that is specialized to exactly how you want it. We even have, I didn't put a picture of it, but we even have SteamOS. So SteamOS on the back end for the Steam Deck actually uses this immutable file system type thing, and that's how they're able to have updates be stable enough for consumer usage. People using a Steam Deck who have no Linux experience don't have to worry about their package manager breaking and causing conflicts. They have that really smooth update system, and they're doing that with an immutable file system. So all of these different variants of Linux and everything gave me the idea, why are all of these immutable distributions, except for SteamOS obviously, why are all of these so niche? Why are they targeting just straight developers and enthusiasts and hobbyists? Like, to be honest, those aren't even the type of people who would be more likely to use something like that, because those are the types of people who know how to fix their system with a package manager conflict. And they also want to be able to customize it, and they don't want a read-only image. They want to be able to edit their system at will. But there aren't any distributions right now trying to push this immutable technology towards a consumer level, and that is changing with stillOS. It makes Linux more friendly, yet we aren't using it to make Linux more friendly. Some other pain points that make Linux not take off in the consumer space that I have noticed from doing a lot of market research. The limited app availability is a problem. You're not going to convince somebody who's been using Photoshop for 10 years to switch over to GIMP, especially when people say GIMP is just as good as Photoshop, but it didn't have non-destructive editing, which is a core feature, until like their new release like 3 weeks ago. Like, they're still super behind. We can't be fully reliant yet on open source apps. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done on that space. Additionally, because of the divergence in ecosystems that's been happening recently, KDE apps have been more and more only working on KDE, and GNOME even more so. GNOME apps are starting to get to a level where if you're running a GNOME app not on GNOME, it just looks completely out of place. And it's causing this confusing mix where you're in the software center trying to find an app to do something, and you have this KDE version and you have this GNOME version. And if you're an experienced Linux user, you know which one you're supposed to get, but for your average consumer, they're just going to be confused by that. Additionally, package managers, they make your computer really flexible, but as I said earlier, they aren't as reliable enough as being the sole way to install apps and update your system. You have package manager conflicts where if you install something from the wrong repo, all your dependencies are going to get messed up. Additionally, if you're running something like an Arch-based system, like a rolling release, there's going to be times where a package manager update is going to break your computer and you have to do manual intervention. Additionally, if you're upgrading between 2 fixed releases, this is less of a problem with non-LTS distros like the 6-month releases of Ubuntu and Fedora, but if you're upgrading between 2 LTS versions of Ubuntu, good luck with that. Something's going to break. You're going to have to go into your system and change something and fix something. That just isn't viable for your average consumer, especially because a consumer would want to be on an LTS most likely. And then additionally, GNOME, this is less of a consumer pain point. This is just a personal pain point. GNOME, I think, is the most polished desktop environment. They have the biggest app ecosystem. They have libweta. Everything just fits together. It's like the same seamlessness as an Apple product, but it is a little bit difficult to customize, and the layout by itself is a bit weird. So enter stillOS. We're fixing all of these problems. So we're actually based on Alma Linux. So earlier versions were heavily based on Fedora, and then I ended up switching into Fedora Silverblue, and then I realized I'm targeting consumers like a lot. They don't care about the newer packages. I can get a huge boost of stability by basing it on Alma Linux instead. And within like the last 3 months, they've made a lot of development with bootc, where Fedora right now is going through a transition for their immutable version from RPM OS tree to this new technology called bootc, where it's more based on Docker instead of RPMs piling on to make an image. The way bootc works is you basically make a Docker container and then modify it, and any modifications you make will generate the bootable container. And with that, it's a lot more flexible now. There's a lot less weird hacks going on in the behind the scenes to make it work. And with that, Alma Linux, as of recently, thanks to the guys at Helium OS, have been able to get bootc containers of Alma Linux that we were able to migrate all of our software from a Fedora base to an Alma base to make it more stable. Additionally, we have a lot of consumer-focused features. To help solve the app gap, we have heavy web app integration similar to RizzyOS, except we're doing it differently than every other distribution, which I'm going to get to later. We also have our Still Center, Software Center that I'm going to talk about later, and Still Control, which I'm going to talk about later. Now let's talk about web app integration. So if you've ever used like the Chromium feature that all of the Chromium-based browsers have, where you're able to essentially take a website and turn it into a PWA through the browser. It is a really hacky method. These title bars are super thin. I can actually pull this up on my system because I took this screenshot this morning. One, the app icon's broken, and then, I mean, it's actually also broken on Sly, but I was gonna fix that. But as you can see, this does not look like it belongs in the system. Your title bar is super short. On every other app, your title for your website is in the middle, and then there isn't an icon if you're on a GNOME desktop. And it just doesn't look like it belongs there. And then additionally, you open another website, and I'm a Firefox guy, but I like to use Chromium for web apps because a lot of web apps break on Firefox. So I used to have PWAs running through Chrome, and then I'd use Firefox for my browsing. But you open a link in one of these PWAs, and it will open in that Chrome window. Why not have it open in your default browser? So there's all these issues with the current implementation of the Chrome site-specific browsers that just rub me the wrong way. And then the ICE solution that I worked on, that Linux Mint forked, that has some problems too. Instead of using the direct, like site-specific PWA features of Chromium, the ICE and the Web App Manager solutions hijack your browser and basically hack it to display just one website. And so I took this screenshot from just the first video I found on it. But as you can see, this is a site-specific browser running inside of Firefox, and you can see the Firefox logo here. You have Firefox scroll bars here. You open another link, and it will try to open another Firefox window without browser controls instead of your actual browser. And then it doesn't have back or forward buttons. So if you're using a web app that is more like a social media or something, or even like Apple Music where you want to be able to hit back and forward, you can't do that with one of these site-specific browsers. So my solution to that is SWI, which stands for Still Web App Integration, but SWI is a funnier name. So what we do is, this is actually an Electron-based framework where it takes a YAML file with all of the information about the web app, and it renders it through Electron, and we replicated perfectly the lib and weta title bars inside of HTML. And so with that, we're able to have back and forward buttons and everything without having like this weird hack and without it looking completely out of place in your system. This is broken right now, but eventually we're gonna have it where if you're in like a Google Docs SWI web app, and then you click on like Google Slides inside of it, it's gonna be smart enough to know that Google Slides isn't Google Docs, and it will open the Google Slides SWI app instead. So it makes the integration between all of the web apps a lot better. What's the only reason that isn't finished now is because on Wayland, you can't change your window app ID, so I'm gonna have to patch Mutter to get that working. Additionally, so I'm actually running this PowerPoint through a SWI app right now. So as you can see here, everything's working great. If I open this in a new window, it'll like detect that it's a new window, but then on the other display, sorry. But then let's say I find like if I find some link, maybe if I go to the about something, if I find some link that will take me out of the web application, it's going to open inside of Chrome instead of SWI. Or that is if I can find an external link.
Open a new window, but that's...
Yeah. I guess just take my word for it.
Well, you can probably click your account and that would give you...
Oh yeah. Good idea. But then I'm gonna dox myself though. Nice try.
You told us it's broken, so we can take your word for it.
Yeah. Alright, sorry, I have to go back to my slide now. Alright, the next feature, still control. So GNOME, like I said earlier, is the most polished IE in my opinion, but as soon as you want to go to customize it, there's pretty much no options whatsoever anywhere in the settings. So you have to go in and install all these extensions. And the extension system actually works really well. It makes GNOME go from the least customizable desktop to arguably even more customizable than KDE, because if you really want something done, you can just patch it with JavaScript. But for like an end user who, let's say, wants like a Windows style layout, setting up all these GNOME extensions and knowing exactly what settings they need to change for it is just like too confusing. And so we have this new program called Still Control, and this makes customizing GNOME as easy as customizing KDE. So when you open it, it gives you all these available layouts, kind of similar to Zorn-OS, but we have a lot more, and we don't charge for them. So the default one is Alki, which is based in this area in Seattle. I named them all after locations, so I'm not going to get sued for just putting Windows 7. We have the Windows 7 layout that is not called Windows 7. And so it basically knows we need dash to panel to be on the bottom, we need the Arc Windows 7 menu, and it will go behind the scenes into all these extensions and configure everything for you. I'm gonna go back to the default. Additionally, we have a bunch of the extension settings, not all of them, some of the more like complicated and advanced ones we did hide away in the regular extension settings. But for like the main settings you're gonna wanna do, we put all of like the main layout features inside of Still Control, and it will know what extensions conflict with each other. Like if I go to dock and enable the dock, it will disable dash to panel, and it's aware of all of the different conflicts that could happen. We have all of these different settings for a bunch of different extensions, and with that you can just fine tune how you want your desktop to look like without needing to install these extensions and go through all of the settings and everything.
Is there a button to break out into the advanced panel?
Yeah. So if I go to the panel settings here, we have all these, we have all of these like panel positioning features, we have intelligent hide, like all the random stuff you'd expect from a panel. And then at the very bottom, we have the advanced panel settings here. And this will open the dash to panel settings. But if I go over to, if I go over here, we have this enable floating dock. This is where stuff just in general with GNOME extensions gets a little bit weird, and I might have to log out and log back in. So, and it tells you that, but I don't want to do that for my presentation, so I'm not going to turn this on. But when I turn this on, it knows, hey, we don't want dash to panel and dash to dock to be running at the same time. That's going to cause bugs. So it disables dash to panel when it opens the dock, and it's just hyper aware of like everything that could go on with that. You have Arc menu settings here. Yes, we also have this tool also just generally integrates everything that is in GNOME Tweaks that didn't get moved to the settings. GNOME Tweaks hasn't been updated in a while, and GNOME moved a bunch of stuff that used to only be in the tweak tool to the actual settings. So we just added the stuff that isn't in the GNOME settings to make this kind of an all-in-one solution. And we also have an extension manager built in, because I was thinking we're doing all this work with extensions and we don't want people to do conflicts with everything by installing other extensions. So this, having our own specialized solution here, makes it less likely for users to break it, and we can do things on our side as a team, like block two extensions installing together that are known to not work. And so this is the extension screen, and then I can go to install, and this searches the GNOME extension registry, and you can install this straight from the app instead of going on the GNOME extension website.
If there's a conflict between extensions, is there like a warning or something to?
So right now that's only a thing with if you try and enable two extensions manually with the extension stillOS includes, it does that. Right now that functionality isn't available for third-party ones, but that is something I do want to implement in the future. Have like a registry where users can report extension conflicts, and then as a team we can go in and put that up and make that warning for those extensions too. Now, Still Software Center. I did develop this on Fedora, and I never tested it on the Alma base until last night, and I thought it would work because it doesn't use anything Fedora specific, but it does crash, so I'm gonna have to fix that tonight. I was gonna drop the preview ISO tonight and make this my special launch event, but this ruined that. But this is going to be our specialized software center. So what we're doing here is we're using, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to like only use GNOME Software Center and just not use the command line to install stuff, but it is not a very good experience. It's mainly because it needs to focus on working on every available distribution that GNOME Software Center could be packaged on. And so they do this with AppStream, which is kind of a standardized repo for, I wouldn't say repo, but standardized metadata that all the package managers can connect to with all the available apps and what package installs it and everything. And then there's Package Kit, which is a middleman between the software centers and anything that may need to install packages that needs to be cross-platform. And it's a middleman that connects to all the package managers. But it works well in some distributions, like Fedora is one of the cases where it does work really well. DNF has amazing Package Kit support, but if you go into like something like Ubuntu, there's a lot of problems with Package Kit and apt, and things just like don't install properly first try. The nice thing about building my own software center is I don't have to worry about all the other distros. So instead of using AppStream, we have our own faster way of handling app metadata, and then we also are not using Package Kit. We have our own Package Kit alternative that is supposed to only work on stillOS called SAM, Still App Manager. And so that is the API that is connecting to Flatpak and everything, and we're able to get that to be a lot more stable, and applications generally install a lot more reliably on the first try through our software center. Plus, we're also going to be able to integrate web apps into the software center and that SWI can run, so we can have the Microsoft Office Online Suite straight in here, and then new Linux users who need to open a Word document who are going to type Word will get the online version, and boom, problem solved. Now, this isn't going to be in the preview release that I'm about to drop because this feature is still unfinished, but with all of these consumer-focused features, we want it to be a very rare, if not like something you'll never do, instance where we don't want you to open the terminal to have to fix your computer. So instead of using your terminal to fix your computer, we wanted to make the other use cases of the terminal stronger for things like software development and everything. So we're making a custom terminal emulator, and it will integrate with DistroBox and SSH and everything. So as a developer, when I'm going in the terminal, I'm usually doing something development related that isn't like system maintenance. So I could have it go straight into an SSH session as soon as I boot it up for a dev server I'm working on, or for developing on stillOS, we have a heavily container-reliant workflow because of the read-only file system using DistroBox. So you can have it makes it very easy to create new DistroBox containers through a UI, and it will display in like a window with all of your available containers, and you can just click it and then set a preferred one to be your default for development work. So you can have it boot straight into a Ubuntu container, do all of your Ubuntu targeting dev work on it, have it straight into an SSH server. We're just trying to make the development through a terminal just a way nicer experience, since most people, if stillOS works well, most people aren't going to have to go into the terminal to fix their system with us.
Do you use Podman or Docker for DistroBox?
I didn't develop DistroBox.
But it can use either.
It uses both. We use Podman by default because that's the Red Hat way, and we're based on Alma. But if Podman's not installed or the user just wants to prefer it, it falls back to DistroBox. All right, release dates. There are 3 bugs that I'm going to try and fix tonight, and I'm going to try and get this out tomorrow. But if not, it will be sometime in the next 2 days. So I'm super excited because I have been working on this for 3 years now, and I'm finally going to get this out in the next 2 days. Just the 3 bugs is Still Center, and then Alma Linux has some branding patches into GNOME, like they replaced the activities button with their logo. Actually, that's not Alma's fault, that's RHEL's fault. They're just replicating RHEL. And then SWI apps are missing icons. So once I fix those 3 breaking bugs, stillOS is going to be dropped in the next 2 days. I'm super excited. And yeah, thank you so much for coming, everyone.